Welcome to my channel, Delightful Stories. I'll be happy if you subscribe to my channel and like it. Enjoy watching and don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments about the story. Kate was in an unusually sunny mood today. It was the second day she was visiting her aunt, her late mother's sister. Kate had thought of her Aunt Emily as her second mother since childhood, and even called her as she used to do when she was a child. She, who had never married and was childless, loved her niece and her son, George, as her own daughter and grandson, and always looked forward to visiting them. And today, from the early morning, Aunt had already been bustling about in the kitchen, trying not to make any noise so as not to wake up her niece. The old woman was frying blinnis in an old frying pan, and the pot was simmering with the rich soup that the niece loved. Numerous jars of pickles and jams had already been lifted from the cellar and opened. Kate, without opening her eyes, stretched herself sweetly and smiled. Tonight, in her sleep, she saw herself as a child again, as she always did when she slept at her aunt's house, and she woke up feeling refreshed and happy, as if she had rebooted. And the bed was wonderful antique iron with a spring. But the most important thing was the enormous size of the feather bed, which was soft in autumn. My aunt had personally knocked it down before she went to bed, and Kate sank into it like a cloud. And the pillows, huge, also unusually soft. Reluctantly opening her eyes, Kate looked at the antique clock on the wall and smiled. Of course, her aunt stopped them so they wouldn't accidentally wake her niece. The woman got out of bed and tiptoed to such enticing, delicious smells in the kitchen, quietly looked out of the door. Right, the aunt had already set the table for at least 5 people. "Good morning," the woman said in a whisper. "Oh my God, Kate!" The old woman spluttered her arms. "Why are you up so early?" "I came to get some rest. You should have rested on the feather bed. You wouldn't do that in a city apartment." "I slept well," laughed the woman. "So come to the table. I have everything ready." She ate her breakfast with pleasure and felt like a little girl, not like a respectable woman of 45. "Well, what's new with you?" Miss Emily asked sympathetically. "How is it going at work? Have you heard from George?" "How's Anthony?" "He's working. Everything is still the same at work. Thank God, since I became chief accountant, life has been easier. The pay is good, there are frequent bonuses. Anthony's work is hard. All day long he lies under the cars at his car service. The oil got into his skin, and the pay is big, or there is no money at all. But nothing. Everything is slowly getting better." When George came back from the army and a few months later announced that he was going to study in Germany, I, of course, could not help myself. A foreign country, foreign customs and order. It was a real new world for me. I probably wouldn't have been able to let go, but no matter how much my motherly heart cried out, I understood that all roads were open for a young boy. There were no fears, no incomprehensible attitudes imposed by life and society. So with a heavy heart I let him go, and now I realize how good he is. He did it. He got an education. He lives and works. And recently, he told me that he was planning to come back. He wants to get married, and he will look for a wife here. Russian girls are more to his liking. I can't wait to see my boy again. "Oh, that's right," the father shouted. "We were very worried about him ourselves." Kate nodded, and to me, he's all little. He always wrote nice letters from the service, and I wondered if he was just trying to make me feel better. But then I went to him and saw everything myself. The commanders talked with respect, praised him, said, "A diligent fighter, a real one." Then he called me from Germany. I think I believe it, but my heart still hurts. Anthony scolds me that I'm getting myself worked up, and I can't help myself. He's 25 now, if my memory serves me right. With a curious look at her niece, Emily clarified. "He's a real man," Kate smiled, remembering her son. "A real man, fit and neat. And what a big man. I feel my heart. We won't have to wait much longer for wedding. When he comes back, he'll find a girl and get married. And I'll be a grandmother and you a great-grandmother. And I'll be a grandmother and you a great-grandmother. I can't wait. Breakfast was over and Kate asked, "What are we going to do today? Don't you want to go to the market with me? I haven't been there in a long time." "Why not? Sure, let's go. It's a good thing it's not far. We can get there in 5 minutes, no need to wait for the bus, and then push in overcrowded traffic." After clearing the table, the women got ready and went to the market. Kate was very fond of that place. At first, many years ago, it was called a spontaneously organized market where they sold kittens, puppies, birds, and all sorts of animals. But gradually, Granny started showing up next to the animals with their vegetables, tied socks and peanuts and clothes. The bird market began to turn into a sort of commission market, and people began to enjoy visiting this place, where they could buy something unique. Soon the market expanded and became a real flea market, in a good sense of the word. You could find there everything from radio components and telephones to antiques and gold jewelry. But the name of Bird's Market was still there. The woman simply loved wandering between the rows of vendors, searching through a chest of cheap old junk for something worthwhile, and sometimes she succeeded. And this time, walking slowly between the rows, Kate and Emily stopped near an older woman. She looked about 80 years old. Her whole face was covered with deep wrinkles. She was wearing old clothes. The woman looked intently at the old saleswoman, trying to understand if she was a gypsy or not. Then her eyes fell upon an unusual pendant and bracelet. "What unusual pendants you have," Kate said, looking at one of them. "What material is this one made of?" "They are not pendants, daughter. They are amulets. Amulets are from evil eye, from an illness. It depends what your problem is." "I have no problem," she muttered, quickly putting her jewelry back. She was about to turn around and leave, but suddenly stopped and looked intently into the eyes of the trader. For a moment she thought she was being mocked. Her eyes were sly. "Still." "There are problems," smirked the elderly peddler. "If you stopped, then tell me and do not be shy. I'll help you in any way I can, and if not, you can go your own way. Do you have anything for luck?" "I want to give my son a present," the woman asked, a little embarrassed. "Of course there is." The saleswoman was delighted. "How old is your son?" 25. The elderly woman was rummaging through a bosom of amulets for a long time, and finally, after choosing one very nice-looking one, she handed it to the buyer. "Take it, you won't regret it." Kate paid and thanked. She was about to leave when suddenly the saleswoman gave her a sly squint. "Take this one, you'll need it." Kate looked closely at the amulet offered in the form of a squirrel, carved from some stone, and looked at the merchant. "What is it? Why do I need it?" "Take it," the peddler insisted. "It's a gift. Squirrel from loneliness helps to find his second half, but it only helps women." "So I do not need," said the woman. "I'm married and not going to divorce. I'm not going to get divorced. I don't suffer from loneliness, that's for sure." She laughed and wanted to leave, but suddenly stopped again and turning to the trader said, "Wait, can I pass this amulet?" "Sure." She smiled and looked at her again with her sly eye. "Then go ahead. I know a lonely one." "That's right," said the merchant. "The unfortunate must be helped." "How does it work?" the woman asked. "It is very simple. Put it around her neck and never take it off, even in the shower. And the first man who sets foot on her doorstep will be her soulmate, and she will marry him." Very pleased with the purchase, and especially with the gift, her niece took her aunt under her arm, and they went home. At home, the aunt asked her niece, "Who do you want to marry? Or have you had enough of Anthony? Have you decided to change it?" "Oh, what are you, mother?" Kate laughed. "He'll tell you if you want to stand or fall. Anthony, we've been together since high school. I love him, not as much as I used to, of course. We've been side by side for over 20 years, but we're like Siamese twins, and I don't want anything else. This is for a friend of mine." And she told a woman's story. Her niece had been an accountant at a large company for a long time, practically since she graduated from an economics institute. She had long ago earned a reputation as a thorough and accurate professional who made no mistakes. Not long ago, 6 months ago, they solemnly and honorably retired the chief accountant, and the woman, who had almost no competitors in her business, was immediately appointed to the vacated position, and her position became vacant. She was instructed to choose the most worthy of all applicants for the vacancy. The woman herself conducted the interview and read resumes, and for some reason, without hesitation, stopped her choice on an something incomprehensible touched the 33-year-old woman's soul. It seemed to her that they were very similar. In their seriousness, thoughtfulness, and even something elusive were similar in appearance. She immediately took the new accountant under her wing, helped and looked after her, and so the women became friends. They were interesting together, had many common topics of conversation. Anne always listened with great interest to Kate's stories about her family, her husband, and the object of her motherly pride, her beloved son. But Anne herself had no luck in her personal life. "You know," said her niece, "he is so good, kind, modest, but I can't meet a normal husband." She saw her boyfriend off for the first time in the army. She was friends with him for many years. She loved him madly. I promised to wait for him, wrote him letters almost every day, even went to see him once. And then I got a letter, just like in the movie. "I'm sorry, my love, it happened." He met some girl, fell in love. After the army, he stayed in the city where he served, got married, started a family. He left her a scar on her heart for life. She stopped believing in men, and what a beauty she is. You should have seen her. Slim figure, like a model. Big, expressive eyes. And she cooks just great, and no one can you imagine, and what a kind soul she is. She's always helping someone. She can feed a homeless person, give a hand to a beggar, or take in an abandoned dog. So, who is the poor guy to take care of? My aunt nodded sympathetically. She has no life of her own, so at least she helps others. Well done, woman. What can I say? Oh, don't tell me, Mom. I have an apartment and a car, Kate went on with her story. And now she has a good job and still no luck. One day she met an engineer at work. I warned her he was an empty person, useless. And she kept saying, "He's just lonely." Me too. Let's warm each other up with warmth. Maybe we'll make a union. And the man had a lot of women around his head. He played around and left. He's not a family man. He's a confirmed bachelor. There are such men who live only for themselves, and they are comfortable only alone in their own world where everything is settled in its place, and they will not change anything. And they need women only on the side to take care of them, coming servant-fed, cleaned, washed, satisfied. As I predicted, and so it happened, as soon as this dog felt danger, saw that she was attached to him, and turned on the back. And my friend is again a broken heart. That's why I pity her to tears. Of course, I cannot say that I strongly believe in all this mysticism, amulets, conspiracies. But true or not, some things give me hope, like a placebo effect. They say help, and one believes. And everything changes. You're right, my aunt agreed. Even a thermometer helps some people with colds. A week later, the woman went to work and was excited to tell her friend about what happened during her vacation. "Hey, I'm about to have a feast for the whole world. My son is coming back in a week." "Oh, I'm so happy for you," a colleague rejoiced. "I saw how worried you were. Well, thank God, now everything is behind us. Your son is beside you, and everything is ahead of you. Soon, you'll be taking care of your grandchildren." "I forgot," Kate said. "I brought you a present. It's not expensive, but it's very valuable. It was given to me by an old trader at the market, so I gave you the amulet. Look how beautiful it is." She handed it to her friend. Anne took the squirrel, stone in her hands, and stared at it, mesmerized, unable to take her eyes off it. "But it's not about beauty. It's an amulet." Kate smiled. "And what is this amulet for?" Without taking her eyes off the stone, Anne asked. "Not from what, but for what?" She corrected her friend. "That amulet helps women to find their true soulmate. I know it sounds like a fairy tale, but let's try it. There's nothing to lose anyway. Right now, put it around your neck and never take it off, neither in your dreams nor in the shower, until you meet your soulmate." "Kate, you and I are grown-up women," smiled her colleague. "Grown up and not grown up? I believe that this amulet will attract a decent man to you. You will find your betrothed. He will marry you, and you will be together forever. Well, at least the merchant promised. Just don't look for anyone on purpose. Everything should happen by chance, unexpectedly, so to speak." Kate did not specify that the first man who crosses the threshold of her house will be the Mushuem, so that everything would happen as fate decides. Thank you," she said, touching her friend. "You're welcome. I bought my son an amulet for good luck and happiness. When he returns, be sure to give it to him." Soon her worries about her son's imminent return took over her completely. All day long, the joyful woman shared her plans with her friend. "As soon as my son comes back, I'll arrange dinner right away. You're invited. That's non-negotiable. Together with you, we'll think up a menu for the holiday table. You're a wonderful cook, aren't you? I could really use your help. Poor guy. He must be tired of restaurant food. He wants homemade. And how many times has he told me that he doesn't cook himself? It's easier to go to a cafe. Let the boy have a tummy time." "You say boy too. It's already a big man." "He'll still be a boy to me in my old age," Kate said dreamily. "I can't wait to nurse my grandson. A little one like my son or a granddaughter. I want a granddaughter even more. We never got a daughter. And every woman, I think, wants to have a daughter." "You're right there," agreed the woman. "I also would have given anything in the world to have a daughter, though without a husband. So for the fullness of life." Exactly 1 week later, the happy mother flew into her office and summoned Anne. "George arrived yesterday," she blurted out. "Oh, my friend, congratulations," rejoiced Anne. "Thank you, dear. Tomorrow is Saturday. 2 weekends ahead, I'm scheduling a feast. Come on, make a menu." The whole day's work clearly didn't stick. The girlfriends did the bare essentials and already, without tearing off, proceeded to make a menu from a grocery list. And all the sweet part of cooking was taken over by Anne as the consummate pastry chef. Early in the morning, she was already whizzing over her kitchen and a little worried. It's one thing to cook for yourself or to treat someone at work. It's another thing to have all the expectations of a large number of guests placed on you. She was constantly calling her friend, asking, "What kind of cream to make on the cake? What to sprinkle the cookies with? Should I not do the writing on the cake?" She seemed more worried than the hostess herself, and even before choosing clothes, the woman was confused. Everything she had was bland and unadorned. And closer to the gala hour, she called Kate again. "Everything, my friend. I have everything ready. Come, or I will send Anthony. Take everything, and I have to run to the store. Something new to buy for the party, and the closet is empty. It'll be embarrassing in front of the guests." "Oh dear, thank you," Kate answered, out of breath. "Only here I am with my head in the oven. I cannot tear myself away. I have to keep an eye on everything. Anthony's gone to the store. I'll send it to you when he gets back. Just put it all neatly in the car yourself, because men can't be trusted with such things. And in the evening, at least come in jeans and a t-shirt like a bayonet. The evening was a success. The champagne flowed like a river. The table was astonishingly plentiful and delicious, and the huge cake was the highlight of the party, and did her best. Soon the men switched to stronger drinks and hearty conversations began. Divided into two camps of guests, the men recalled their own army days, listened to George's stories, and compared women. First, they discussed the problems of raising boys and praised George. In general, all the guests were satisfied with the party. George, as the only man in the company who didn't drink, took all the guests home and soon got through to his mother. "Came on, friends met. I won't be home for the night, and don't worry."
Really sure?
"Take a walk, son," as the mother smiled into the phone.
Is the mother smiled into the phone? Just park the car. In case you have to drink, you can't drive.
A week had passed since then. George drove to the supermarket for groceries sent there by his mother. As luck would have it, all the parking spaces were occupied, and the young man stopped in a forbidden parking lot. He was approached by a policeman. "We'll have to issue a fine. Look right under the 'No Parking' sign. You're breaking the law." George thought rapidly about what he could do to avoid the fine. And suddenly, looking ahead of him, he smiled and said to the policeman, "Here comes my wife. Look how she is loaded. Now I'll take her bags and we won't be here. I can't leave her with these bags." And he ran towards a young woman with huge bags in her hands. "And good afternoon. Do not be frightened. Pretend for 5 minutes my wife, or I will be fined. What if they take away your license? And I'll take you home and help you carry the bags to the apartment." She was speechless for a moment with surprise, but quickly pulled herself together and joined in the game. Okay. She could not refuse her friend's son. "You see, my wife is here, and we are leaving," he said to the policeman. The policeman shook his head and stared for a long time, but did not insist on a fine. Already in the car, George said, "Thank you, Anne. My mom sent me out for groceries, and today is the day off, and everyone apparently decided to come to the supermarket at the same time. No place to park. Good thing I saw you. If it wasn't for you, the policeman would have fined me for sure. Which way do you want to go?" "There to the traffic light, and then turn right. Now left." "That's it. We're there. There's my house." George parked, jumped out of the car and helped the passenger out, opening the door for her and getting her bags out of the trunk. With quick steps, they headed for the only entrance. She felt uncomfortable and decided not to help. But the boy immediately objected, saying that a woman should not have to carry such heavy things, and that he would carry the bags right up to the apartment. When the woman got to the 7th floor, she wanted to thank him for his efforts. The bags were really heavy, and she understood that. So she suggested he drop in for a cup of tea. The young man did not refuse and spent an hour there, and then he went home. The next day, on her way home from work, Anne saw a guy waiting for her in his car. He was sitting behind the wheel, listening to the music that was playing softly in the background in the cabin. When he saw Anne's frail figure with the bags, he immediately got out of the car, offered to help, and drove her home. The guy knew the woman was considerably older than he was, and their acquaintance could be considered casual, but no woman evoked so much desire in him. No woman could evoke the kind of feelings he felt for this frail woman. He didn't understand what it was about her that others didn't, but he wanted to protect her, to hold her to him, and never let her go. Anne was surprised, but also glad to see him again. She could not believe that he came almost every night and came back only in the morning. All her dreams seemed to come true, and a son by her side, and a fiancé of sorts appeared. "So what kind of girl is this?" I ask. And he just smiles and mysteriously answers, "All in good time. You'll get to know her." Do you believe it? No, it's horrible how I want at least one look at my son's girlfriend. Maybe your son is right. With a smile, answered the employee. Why rush the events? It may not be serious. and you're going to marry him. Oh, maybe you're right, she agreed. But I still hope he's serious. You know how I dream of grandchildren. It's still to come. Don't worry. How are you doing on the personal front, if it's not a secret? Still the same, she shrugged. We'll have to wait. Yeah, well, that's the only option. I lost the good luck charm I bought for my son. I searched the whole house. I can't find it anywhere. Maybe there's more. And the women moved on to work life. And one beautiful sunny day, George came home from another date, and his mother said from the threshold, "Son, but this is already a torment alone. When are you going to meet your girlfriend? I see you look happy. One word in love, and I want to be happy too. Make your mother happy too. Make your mother happy. Show her your chosen one. I promise not a word or a look, even if I don't like your girlfriend. Although I'm sure you won't disappoint me." "Yes, of course I won't, Mom." He hugged his mother. "I know for a fact that you will like my sweetheart. I'll introduce her to you soon. She's just not ready yet. She's shy. God, it is understandable that you have chosen a beautiful girl, but she's also modest. I like that kind of girl." And at work, he was talking to a co-worker again. "You know, I can't wait. I don't care if she's lame or slanted, as long as I get to know her soon. And who really cares what my son's fiancé looks like? As long as he's so happy." "You're right," agreed Anne. "The main thing that my son is happy." And then, finally, the day came when the boy called and solemnly told his mother, "That's it, Mummy. You've waited. I persuaded my sweetheart to come over for dinner tonight." An excited Kate immediately asked her friend, "Honey, I need your signature cake right away. My son is bringing his girlfriend tonight." "No problem, we'll make it," she replied. In the evening, the woman looked through the window for the umpteenth time, anxiously awaiting the arrival of her long-awaited guests. Finally, the doorbell rang. Kate cast one last appraising glance at herself in the mirror and rushed to open the door. Standing on the threshold was Anne. The hostess said hello, but suddenly Kate was silent. Her son followed her in, and no one else. Kate looked out the door in bewilderment and turned to her son. "What happened? Why are you alone? Where is your fiancé?" "Mom, really, there she is, my sweetheart." George looked at his mother in confusion, and she looked at her friend in amazement. "You, how could you? How dare you? You decided to ruin my son's life. And this is for all that I have done for you. Look at her. She's got a snake on her chest." "Mother, what are you talking about?" George decisively shielded himself from the embarrassed Anne. "It is my choice. I love her, fell in love with her at first sight, and I can't and won't live without her. And you must accept my choice." Then Anthony came out into the noise. He stared at everyone incomprehensibly. What's all the noise and no fighting? What's going on? "Oh, hello, Anne." Kate looked at her ex-girlfriend with hatred. "Look, Father, who your beloved son has chosen for himself. A woman almost twice his age." "Mom," the son interrupted the mother. "I didn't come to consult. I don't really care whether it's right for you or not. I just decided to share my joy with you. It's not just Anne, it's the woman I love." "Stop it." Tears came to the bride's eyes. "I didn't want it to turn out like this. George came to me first, asked me to help him. And, of course, you couldn't refuse," the woman smirked. "You don't understand," sighed Anne. "We just knew right away that we were meant for each other, and we tried not to separate anymore. I don't know what's happening to me either, but I am madly in love with your son." "Made for each other?" Kate mocked. "When you were in high school and you were making love, my son was still walking under the table and just learning to speak. I'm here for you, you shameless, with all my heart. And you, "Don't you dare shout at her, Mom." The boy calmly took her hand. "She's a beautiful woman. Can't you and your father be happy for me? Don't you and your father know what it means to love each other?" "Yes, son." Suddenly there came a loud voice from my father, who had been observing the situation and had not immediately understood, amidst the shouting, what was so terrible. "It's just that, son. Your mother and I didn't notice when you had time to grow up and get wise and fall in love with someone. Are you sure you're right for each other? If so, then go ahead and listen to no one. It's your life. And only you should decide with whom, where, and how you will live it." The son smiled, nodded at his father, and caught his mother's gaze again. But was it impossible to find a younger man in the whole town? The woman's heart was bursting with pain and resentment. Both her son and her friend had betrayed her in one moment. Even her father's last words of encouragement could not remedy the situation. The look in her mother's eyes killed all life around her. She was generally serious and very authoritarian. So for the first time, while the young ones were figuring things out, fluff and feathers flew. As they grew older, they learned to give way to each other, and peace reigned in the family. But sometimes passions heated up, and there was no escape from sorting things out. My father had been a handsome man in his youth. 6 feet tall, broad in the shoulders, hair thick, dimples on the chin. Kate understood that she was far from beautiful, and at first she was jealous of her husband, afraid that he would steal her away. Then one day he sat her down across from him and said, "You can seduce a man who has a wife. You can seduce a man who has a mistress. But you can't seduce a man who has a woman he loves." How beautifully you said, how beautifully you said, hugging her husband. "It was not me who said it, Omar Khayyam, but still beautiful. Forgive me, my love." Anthony had loved only one woman all his life, and when asked, "How do you put up with her?" he replied with a smile, "With the same way she put up with me." The son was like his father, and the boy's character was a little softer than his parents', but he took from them stubbornness, enterprise, and decency. He was not going to give up his bride, so he began to think of a further plan of action. The young people left without even taking their shoes off, and the saddened mother collapsed into an armchair in helplessness. Suddenly her face became blotchy. She remembered, as if it were yesterday, the face of the market trader and her words. "The first man who sets foot on her doorstep will be her beloved. He is the one she will marry. He is the one she will marry." She created happiness for this woman with her own hands. She gave the agreed amulet and sent her own son to that unfortunate supermarket. God only knows how he ended up in her apartment. For a long time, the boy's father calmed his wife down, trying to bring her to her senses, but she was like a stone. The next day in the morning, she stood in front of her colleague's door. With a trembling hand, she pressed the bell button. "Hello." "Hello," said a surprised Anne, opening the door and seeing an unexpected guest. "Come in. I just got lost and didn't think you'd come." But Kate silently reached out to her former friend and pulled the amulet from her neck. "I gave it to you for my own sake, but I won't give you my son. Don't you dare. If there is poison, there must be an antidote, and I will find a cure for this cursed stone." The woman turned to her son, who had stepped out into the noise of the voices. "And to you, my son, I have only one thing to say. You have greatly disappointed me, and now I am placing you before the most serious choice of your life, either her or me. And before you make that choice, think hard, don't make a mistake. There are many girlfriends in life, but there is only one mother." The boy went pale, but stubbornly threw his head up. "I'm not going to choose. You're the one who insists on it. I love you and I love her. But since you have not accepted my love, it is time for you to go. If you ever realize you were wrong, my future wife and I will always be glad to see you." The woman turned and walked quickly down the stairs. tears covering her eyes, and the woman whispered frantically, "I hate her." An hour later, the woman called work and asked to take a few days off at her own expense for family reasons. Already in the evening she was at her aunt's, where she complained in tears, "Well, why do I do it? I am to them with all my heart, and they stabbed me in the back and even turned. She is almost 10 years older than him. No shame, no conscience. And I'm a fool. I gave her an amulet. Can you imagine? So that she could find her happiness as a woman and get married. She will, to my son. My girl, maybe you should not be so worried, nervous." Emily stroked her niece's hair. "You yourself were praising your friend, saying that she is kind, beautiful, hard, working. So there's 10 years difference. You're 5 years older than your husband." "Only 5 years." She flared up. "No, I won't allow this marriage. I'll lie down, and it won't happen. And if he marries, let him forget his mother. We shall fight again." She had been to the market early the next morning and had dashed up and down the aisles to find the tramp who had given her that damned amulet. At last she saw the same old woman. "Hello, do you remember when I bought the amulet from you? You gave me another one?" "I remember," calmly replied saleswoman, laying her mysterious goods on the counter. "Why are you so excited to thank you for coming?" The old woman looked at her and smiled. "You knew everything, didn't you?" Kate spoke hotly. "I see in your eyes that you knew all beforehand. I don't know who you are, but I beg you to put it back the way it was. My son will not be happy with her." And Kate told the woman the whole story, ending with the words, "Help me, please, to prevent this marriage. I will not spare any money. Make a reversal. I don't want my son's life to go wrong. And you do not hurry." She patted her shoulder and took her hand in hers. "You are against this marriage in vain. I see that in a little while you will be ready to kiss this woman's feet. Don't interfere with them. Accept it, and you'll never regret it. Nothing in life just happens, it's God's will." Kate pulled her hand out with force. "What? You too? If you don't want to help, just say so. I can do it myself." "Good. Bye." She turned abruptly and walked away at a brisk pace. And the merchant looked after her for a long time, shaking her head and smiling at her own thoughts. A year had passed since then. She had no contact at all with her son. At first she hoped that her son would come to his senses, but then she lost all hope when she received the invitation card inviting her and her husband to the wedding. She angrily tore up the invitation and cried for hours, admitting that she had lost and was powerless to do anything about it. Her husband only asked what the card was. "Why are you crying?" "Damn them to hell, the bride and groom," the woman replied in anger. "It's over. They are getting married. Can you imagine? They still have the conscience to invite us. I'll never set foot there." "Darling, maybe you shouldn't do that." The husband tried to hug his wife. "Maybe she'll make our son happy." "Well, let's put up with it. Let's go congratulate him." The woman sharply pushed away her husband. "Don't you dare." "What? All conspired or what? If you betray me, you'd better go straight away to live with them and forget about me." The young couple got married in a registry office and became man and wife. The bride could not stand the hatred of her former girlfriend and quit her job, transferred to another, which she was unspeakably happy about. It was unbearable for her to constantly see the woman who had taken her son away. She heard rumors that the young couple were getting along well, that they loved each other tenderly, reverently, and lived with their wives. The mother hoped that her son would come to his senses, throw himself at her feet, and confess his wrongdoing. But time passed, and he did not make himself known. One day Anne felt bad at work. She felt dizzy and nauseous. Not feeling her legs from joyful anticipation, the woman rushed to the antenatal clinic. The doctor's verdict was unequivocal. She is pregnant. In the evening she laid a festive table, lit candles, and waited for her husband to return from work. Upon entering the apartment, George turned his nose up. "Wow, how it smells. My love, you are just a cook." And when he saw the lit candles and a beautiful set, he was surprised. "Did I forget something? Do we have some date? An anniversary of acquaintance? Of a kiss? But definitely not your birthday. Him I already know as my own. Sweetheart, you haven't forgotten anything." On a very, very important date. Yes. And what is that significant date? You've really got me intrigued. It's the day our baby is due in 3 months. The guy grabbed his wife in his arms and cradled her in his arms, swaying gently. "You've made me the happiest of people. I had no idea it was possible to be even happier than I am now. It turns out that there is no limit to human joy. Happiness is so multifaceted." And he whirled his wife around the room like a toy. With a frightened shriek, she demanded, "Put me on the floor at once. Do not shake, please, or I will be sick again." He gently put his wife on a chair. He knelt down and pressed his head to her. Still not at all noticeable belly. No, think about it. In this belly is already growing little creature with tiny hands and feet. And soon the baby will see the light and with big clear eyes will look at you and me, will understand that we are his mother and father. "He'll understand right away," laughed the woman. "At first kids don't understand anything. They just eat and sleep. But then you and I will teach him everything." I can't get it into my head. We will have some tiny creature lying in our crib, our work of art. And he'll call us a daddy. And he'll call us a daddy. The couple remembered that the husband's family needed to be notified of the imminent addition. The mother had wanted grandchildren for so long. "That's just great. I'm going to call my dad right now and have him tell my mom." The wife nodded happily and listened to her husband on the phone. After listening to his son and wholeheartedly congratulating the future mother and father, the father promised to give the news to his wife. Intentionally listening to her husband's conversation, the woman suspected something wrong when he, proudly smiling, told her that she would be a grandmother. All he got in return was a pursed lip and a quivering chin of his wife. "I am surprised and amazed at your stubbornness and your denial of the obvious. Our son is happy with the woman he loves and about to become a father. And it's like you're buried in your resentment. Whatever you want, I'll go to my son and daughter-in-law tomorrow and rejoice." Without another word, he turned around and left the room, and the grandmother, to be sat for a long time in the chair, shrugging her shoulders and staring implacably into the distance. Anne was already out on maternity leave. Walking was getting harder and harder. Her legs were aching and she was constantly nauseous. She hardly ever left the house. Her husband was running around like a squirrel in a wheel, torn between work and a part-time job that he didn't want to quit because they were going to have a baby in a month. They already knew it was going to be a little girl and they needed a lot of money. However, her grandfather came often, helped with money, even added money for a car for his son to make their life easier. It was hard to get to the hospital by bus, and especially hard for a woman with a heavy pregnancy. Besides, she was going to give birth soon, and then a car would be good for her. The family will increase by one. The chronically tired and sleepy man did not complain about life, but rather happily took more and more work to provide for his beloved wife and daughter. This did not go unnoticed. One night, on his way home from work, he simply fell asleep at the wheel without realizing it himself. Anne was awakened by a night call. She was so tired from the day that she fell asleep without waiting for her husband. Without looking at the screen, she mumbled sleepily into the receiver, "George, where are you?" Excuse me. Her sleep vanished at once, and she gasped with a strange intuition. Who are you? What happened to my husband? Calm down, please. Your husband has been seriously injured in an accident. Come to the regional hospital, to the Department of Traumatology. The woman made a monstrous effort to pull herself together. She was shaking violently. With difficulty hitting the numbers with her fingers, the woman dialed her father-in-law's number and uttered, "Had an accident. He's alive. Help me get to the hospital. It's urgent." And the phone slipped out of the woman's hands. Anthony arrived 10 minutes later. The man was anxious, but held on, feeling responsible not only for his son, but also for his daughter-in-law and granddaughter. He helped the woman get dressed, pack her things, and together they drove to the hospital. "Where is Kate?" and just asked. "She's already in the hospital," Anthony answered. The trauma room was deserted. Of course, it was late at night. Only the boy's mother was pacing in the corridor, frantic with anxiety. When she saw her husband and daughter-in-law, the woman looked at her with hatred and spat her out dryly. "Happy with yourself? You drove my son to it. If he hadn't messed with you, he would be alive and well now." "What?" The woman staggered. "What is the meaning of this? Is he dead?" Suddenly her legs buckled and she felt a sharp pain in the pit of her stomach. And the last thing the woman heard before she lost consciousness was, "Are you even normal? What are you babbling about?" She could lose the baby, and then they could lose the baby too. But then everything faded into darkness. The woman in labor was rushed to a nearby maternity ward. A few hours later, she was in her room. The woman slowly came to herself. Her thoughts about her husband and daughter haunted her. She cried, and an elderly nurse came into the room. "Quietly, quietly, lie still. After the birth, you must rest." "My daughter," the woman breathed out. "What is wrong with her? Is she alive?" "Beautiful girl. Of course she is alive." The nurse reassured her. "Only you cannot see her yet. She's in the oxygen chamber. Your daughter came into the world a little early. The doctors are very good, so do not worry. They will bring your daughter out. Soon you will meet." But the woman in labor wouldn't let up. "My husband, is he alive?" "I know, sweetheart. I called the traumatology department. Your husband was also operated on, and he was saved. I told you we have good doctors, so lie down and rest easy. We'll do it later. Right now, you need to get your strength back. Both your husband and your daughter need you sleep, honey, and be strong." And only then she fell asleep. She slept for most of the day. By evening, when the woman woke up, struggled to her feet, and left the room, the nurse resisted. "Where are you going?" But the woman resolutely pushed the barrier aside and only asked, With a doomed sigh, the older woman took her aside and pointed through the glass at the tiny baby girl. "See, she's alive. She'll be well soon. Now go and lie down in bed." And only lie down in bed. But she only shook her head negatively. "I must go to my husband." And treading heavily, went to his ward. Fortunately, it was in the same building, and immediately saw his parents. The man, seeing his sister-in-law, rushed to her and in great anxiety and questioning about her well-being, but she ran to the ward to her lover. He was lying, coming out of anesthesia, all in wires and tubes, under the sad gaze of his father. That is how Anne learned that her husband's spine had been broken, and according to doctor's prognosis, he would not be able to walk. However, the woman promised herself to be strong and to put not only her daughter, but her husband on her feet as well. The next day, when she came to her husband again, the effect of anesthesia had already worn off, and the patient was lying with his eyes open, staring blankly at the ceiling. He did not even react to her words. He did not even turn his head in her direction. My dear, she began softly, I understand that this is very difficult for you, right? You see, then he finally looked at his wife. What do you understand what? I'm only 25 years old and I'm already disabled for life. I've been on these legs for 25 years, and now I'm destined to sit and lie down, and at best get around in a wheelchair. I'm going to get a disability pension. Your spouse is a pensioner, you know. Don't be like that. She wiped away her tears, shocked by her husband's words. You're breaking my heart, my love. We'll make it at all. Just don't get discouraged. I am not let a problem, even a serious one, ruin our lives. We will fight. You are strong, you can do it. In response to his wife's speech, he simply turned back against the wall in silence and closed his eyes. I am tired, and you go. Already in the room, she sobbed uncontrollably. She was comforted only by the fact that she had been given the long-awaited baby girl, and now mother and daughter were together. A plan matured in the woman's mind. She quickly went into her husband's room and walked over to the bed. Hello. She kissed her spouse on the cheek. Listen, darling, will you stop lying there feeling sorry for yourself? You are a healthy man, strong young. You and I will fight together. Yes, of course, he answered indifferently. Come to your senses. Stop whining. You haven't even once asked about your daughter. What's the matter with you? You were so happy we were going to have a baby. He suddenly changed subtly and smiled. I'm sorry, how's the baby? She's a miracle. She's blooming. And they've already moved her to my room, so little and so beautiful. She's a real fighter. She fought for life and she won. Would you like me to bring her to you tomorrow to meet her daddy? Sure, bring her over. I'm sorry. I'll try to pull myself together. As she approached her room, she was surprised. There were voices and quiet laughter coming from inside. She entered and stopped on the threshold, unable to believe her eyes. Her mother-in-law was sitting on the bed, smiling, with a baby girl in her arms, and her husband standing beside her. And who do we have? Who is so beautiful? And whose tiny little fingers are those? Kate saw Anne come out and was embarrassed. I'm sorry we didn't have permission, but I just wanted to see my granddaughter. I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I had made myself believe. And then I kept growing an irreconcilable dislike for you in my heart. You made my son happy, and now you have made us happy too. You gave him such a fairy tale little beauty. The women hugged each other and headed to the trauma unit with the little girl in their arms. A year had passed since that day. George was in a wheelchair and took care of his daughter from home. The girl was named Angelina, and Anne got another job and kept saving for her husband's surgery. Relatives also contributed to the piggy bank. In addition, grandparents took turns babysitting their granddaughter, sending their son for treatments, supportive massage, or just when the young dad was at home working out his legs with physical exercises. The wife was always there to help her spouse. George, feeling the tremendous support of his family, finally believed in himself. When the family saved the necessary amount of money, he had an operation, and very successfully. Now there was a long rehabilitation period ahead of him. The couple accepted their aunt's offer to move in with her, because everyone knows that fresh air heals. Kate spent a long time apologizing to her daughter-in-law and admitting her guilt by returning the amulet she had once torn from her neck. I never held a grudge against you. You're a mother. You had the right to disagree with your son's choices. But still, in the end, you understood and accepted. I hope we carry our friendship through the years, too. Anne, George, and their daughter settled down with their aunt. Anne got a job again. George worked hard on himself, and Angelina was always supervised by her loving great-grandmother, who seemed to get younger. After a while, the boy began to take his first steps, and with difficulty and pain, but he went. Now it was no longer a hope, but a reality. Sitting in a wheelchair, he found a job remotely and was soon earning a good salary. Everything in the family was going well. But Anne constantly wondered if my happiness depended on these amulets bought from an unfamiliar trader. What if it wasn't an accident? And what would have happened if Kate hadn't bought that amulet?